Welcome everybody to the session on a university degree isn't the only pathway to career success. It's lovely to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining. One of our panelists, Frank, will be coming on board in a few minutes. And as soon as he does, I suggest, Rob, we can go to him at that time.
Yeah.
But for now, why don't we just get started? I think people are shuffling around between the different sessions, but we can get going. Time is of the essence, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a lot to talk about.
Indeed. Thank you, Kathleen. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to be moderating this session today. I hope the summit's been enjoyable, useful, and I hope that it sparked your imagination. My name's Rob Johnson, and I work for Central YMCA, which is the world's first YMCA. We're a national charity in the UK that advances the education, health, and well-being of our communities. We break down barriers to create improved access to life-changing opportunities. Please allow me to introduce our panel today. I have Dan, Katie, and Lawrence, and as Kathleen said, we're waiting for Frank to join us, and hopefully he will join us soon. So if I can, I'm going to start with Lawrence. Lawrence, can you give everyone a brief introduction, please?
Yes, sure. So my name is Lawrence Gates, and I'm here today as a board member of WorldSkills International. So WorldSkills actually works to raise the profile and recognition of skilled people and show how important skills are in achieving economic growth. And we do this by organizing skills competitions for young people, and Dan's one of our former competitors. So very glad to be here today to talk about this very important topic. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Over to you, Katie.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Raymond with the International Youth Foundation. The International Youth Foundation works on increasing youth agency, so youth ability to be more successful in achieving their goals in life, and promoting economic opportunity for all young people, and also helping improve systems that serve young people. And it's very nice to be with you all today.
Great, thank you, Katie. Dan, over to you, please.
As Lawrence mentioned, I was an ex-competitor in the World Skills competitions. Now I represent them as a member of the Champions Trust, being a voice on behalf of all the competitors and I guess the youth, right, in our mission to achieve our, our goals and our movement, really.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to start the session by asking Dan some questions. Well, not asking Dan some questions. Dan, could you talk us through your experience of getting into employment in what wasn't a university route, and just give us a kind of overview and why you decided to take the route that you did?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, actually. I'm very fortunate to have been involved in the World Skills competitions. They were a catalyst that allowed me to grow into my career. I'm a game developer, so I create 3D art for video games, and it's a dream job for someone like me who loves playing games and stuff. And it's widely considered as a super competitive industry, something that it's required that you need at least a degree, usually a master's degree, to have the skills to be able to step into that industry and be able to succeed. But using the World Skills competitions whilst I was in college, so from the ages of 16 to 18, I was able to self-teach along using my training for those competitions to allow me to almost skip the 4 preceding years of training, because it accelerated my growth. Go further faster, and it allowed me to get my foot into my dream job at the age of 18, as opposed to I'd suppose around 23, 22. And it's really kickstarted my career, and I'm very fortunate to have had that opportunity.
Were there, I mean, that's amazing. And you talk about it kickstarting your career. Were there any pitfalls by taking the route that you did?
Well, yeah, I suppose it's untrod ground a lot of the time when you're trying to forge your own path past the more linear methods into careers. You're almost hit with hurdles and stuff. A lot of job descriptions will be like, oh, you need a degree as a requirement. But in the creative sector, I think almost any hiring manager will agree that if you can demonstrate you have the skills and the creative skills to do that job, certain things in that job description can be waived. So I guess looking at jobs that were like, oh, you need to be able to do this, to do that, it kind of worried me a bit. But eventually, like, I managed to network my way in front of people, and they just assumed I had a degree because they'd seen the work I was doing. And then when they found out I didn't have one and how old I was, they were just like, oh, that's cool, and just treated me like anyone else. And it was just like a very nonchalant way of getting into the industry, really. It was a lot of hard work, though. Obviously, trying to get a degree is no small feat of work, and a lot of that learning had to happen once I was in the job. But it was more about proving that I had the skills to teach myself and learn and adapt, and that's what the employer ultimately cared more about than someone. They were like, I'd rather have you now at the age of 18, where we can kind of teach you and grow you more, than wait 3 years and you'd be at like a similar level, because we haven't had a chance to mold you into our team.
Yeah, for sure. Katie, Dan's talking about skills, and I know that you work with some large organisations that see skills in a very broad way. Can you give us a bit more info?
Yeah, and I so agree with what Dan was just commenting on. It's a lot of wisdom there. I think so much of it really is demonstrating skills, and also having that attitude that you believe in yourself to learn new skills. And employers are often looking for people that are coming in ready to learn and be coached. And so I think all of that is very true to the work and programs that we work on. I'm currently working on a program for skills training for hospitality, which I'm very excited about. And that is an industry where folks can absolutely enter without a degree. And I think that's a little bit misunderstood of how far you can get. What we offer is soft skill training. So life skills, soft skills, 21st century skills, they kind of go by a lot of different names, but talking about the interpersonal skills, communication skills, problem solving and conflict resolution, really practical life skills, and also employability skills, essentially paired with on-the-job training can get people really launched into great careers. And I think that's just not fully understood, that you really can come in and start at a front desk or doing room service and work your way up into management and even corporate jobs, or move around globally. So yeah, that's a big part of our program is the skill building.
Yeah, fantastic. And Lawrence, I know from World Skills that do an amazing job promoting different routes into employment. Dan's spoken about skills. Katie's spoken about the broader skills. In terms of young people understanding that there are different routes, what do you think that we can do better in promoting access to employment?
Well, I think that everybody knows about careers as, a doctor, a lawyer, or, the big things. But as Dan mentioned, there's sectors of the economy that young people haven't even heard of. And I think that's the first hurdle I think that needs to be crossed, is making sure that the information's out there, that youngsters are aware that there's more ways to reach success and excellence than just going to university. I think that's the first step. I think the second step is, as Katie mentioned, is also it's convincing people that the university degree is not your your one and you all, and the one thing you absolutely have to have that's going to open you all the doors. There's other ways of opening those doors than just having to go for a high level degree. And I think that would be, to me, the two biggest hurdles. And you need to cross those with not just the general public, parents. I think that's usually, parents want their kids to succeed. I know my dad was, all about me going to university because he'd never been, and he wanted me to have a proper good career. And looking back, if I had known about some of the skills I know about today, I might have had a completely different life, because I would have chosen to do something else. So I think that to me are the two biggest hurdles at the moment.
Yeah, and it was interesting that going back to the plenary that I watched, one of the panel was saying don't wait. Reach out to employers. Be proactive, and I think that's really important. And there is a piece around that actually, Dan said it. Employers are looking to mould their teams, their staff, and I think if you're proactive and you're tenacious, that's going to be your route in. Dan also said something. Don't just look at a job description and think, I don't have the skills. It's a conversation, because you might have 80%, the other 20 can be learned. So we have Frank. Welcome, Frank. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, Frank. Welcome.
I am sorry I'm having so many problems. I didn't realize hop in, and of course there's so many different panels and different things, and of course you have to have the right email address and all those good things.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. So we have started the session. You've come in at a perfect moment. Perhaps you can give the participants a brief introduction in relation to who you are and what you do.
Sure. Okay, well, my name is Frank Nanthera, and I'm the CEO of Studica Robotics, and we've been in business now for 36 years. Started the company basically right out of university. So I do have a degree, but I sort of went through it the hard way. And, so I do have a bit of a background there, but I really only have about 5 months of actual work experience after finishing school, to the point where I started the company with my current day partner. And we basically develop technology products for education, and our focus is robotics that are used in the classroom for teaching robotics, programming, computer-aided design, manufacturing, etc.
Fantastic. Now, thank you for that. We were just talking about sort of skills and coming into employment, not necessarily having coming into good employment without having a degree. And I know as an employer that you've engaged with young people coming into your business without degrees. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Oh, looks like we may have lost him.
I think we've lost him indeed, yes. I think whilst we wait for Frank to rejoin, I think that, from my experience as well, that there's other ways and other things that employers are looking at. There's Frank.
I'm very, very sorry about that, but yes, eventually we get it.
Good. Lawrence, please continue.
Yeah, I was just going to briefly mention that, there's other ways of kind of getting an interest into a business. I know of, Dan mentioned, I started, didn't quite finish. I've known of other cases where plain and simply, it's just been a matter of the employer being interested in you showing the right promises in your behavior, in the way you behaved and the things you've done to give you your chance to get started, and then actually going out, I made a really good choice, because he might not know all the things I want him to know, but, he's got the capacity to learn, and actually he's amazing in his attitude towards work and towards learning. And I think that is really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think your attitude responding to an employer is one of the fundamental skills that we all need to work on to keep having the right approach, the right response. So yeah, really couldn't agree more. So Frank, my question to you, and you may have heard some of it, but I'll repeat it, was as an employer, you've recruited individuals that didn't have degrees. You've recruited them in different ways. Can you give us a bit of an overview in relation to the people that you've engaged with that don't have degrees?
Sure. From my point of view, and I say it all the time, the smartest people are not necessarily the ones that have the education. Education is a great way to open doors and help you get a little bit of an idea of what you want to do or where you want to go, but it's not necessarily the end all to achieve whatever you achieve. There's a lot of people out there that with no education at all that do really well, extremely well, and they could become millionaires and billionaires. It's, I think The people that I have hired in the past, I mean, you certainly look for someone that, I think, number one, they have to be a good communicator. That's first, the most important thing that I look at, being able to communicate. Secondly, someone that can basically doesn't need to be told what to do every single minute. They can basically foresee that, something has to be done, and they immediately start to do it. Whether, you can think about something at home, for example, you may be cooking, or you may be doing something, and you have a friend or somebody sitting down next to you, and they're just sitting there. Somebody who takes the initiative will hand you the tool, or will see that you need help. That's the kind of person that I believe makes the best type of employee. I think that someone like that can basically do whatever they want. I don't put any limits to anybody because of education.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that I think employers, large employers, small employers now are looking at differentiating their workforce, and so they're reaching out into different communities that wouldn't necessarily be the community that actually was the general throughput into employment for whatever sector it might be. And yes, being proactive is one of the most important things that you can do in your career. Katie, some of your larger employers, so in terms of the model person, who is the model person to them?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Frank was just talking about is if I have to think across large employers and small employers, that is probably the main things that every employer is looking for. And what we often hear is that they are happy to train folks on the technical skills needed. In fact, they often prefer that because it'll be their exact machines or their exact software systems. They don't necessarily want that coming out of the education system because they want it tailored to their own business. And they have people and systems set up to do that onboarding and training. But what they often struggle with, we find, is the soft skill training, this life skill training. And that's why IYF's been really focused on that for now, like 17 years. And we have 100 hours of curriculum to cover these things because we really believe, and continually in the marketplace, that is a kind of a real skill gap, or something that even if folks are strong in, it can be enhanced, or just a reminder of how critical that is. Because I think sometimes people just don't hear that enough or realize that enough, and it doesn't matter if you're 16 or 14 or 55. It really comes down to those attitudinal, behavioral skills at the foundation. And I think that's really transferable across if you're going to run your own business or work for somebody or even be a student. It's really the success of having that, looking around and seeing what needs to be done, what's kind of missing, and having taking on a lot of initiative and communicating well with folks. All of those types of skills we really find again and again is what a lot of our employers are looking for.
Thank you. Dan, in your experience, so you were a recipient of, I think you were the European WorldSkills Trust beneficiary, weren't you? I wonder, in your career, your early career, in terms of the soft skills, so you've obviously, there's an awful lot that you've learned, but what can you share that you think, do you agree with the panel? Are there elements that you think actually we need to talk about a particular soft skill?
I think probably the most important thing, and I think it transcends industry really, is no matter where you work, the ability to adapt and learn. I mean, everything I was taught about my industry and workflow and what I'm meant to do when I get into the job, it was almost like day one, they showed me the book and ripped it up and went, that's how you're taught to do it, but how you actually do it is very different. And that's one of the reasons like employers care so much about your ability to adapt, because if it's an understanding, like if you know how to make something, like, or know how to do something like a task, that's all well and good if that's the only thing you're doing, but you need to understand the process behind completing that task to be able to adapt to different things. And I think it's important to have an understanding of your industry and your skill as opposed to a knowledge of it, because that's ultimately what's going to allow you to thrive. And when that rule book is torn up in front of you in certain aspects, you're not going to be fazed by that, because you're going to be able to just go, okay, we'll make a new book and live by that instead.
Interesting. What was your response when they said, you need to rip up the rule book?
It was really interesting. Like, it's happened a couple times. It happens like, in a moving world, innovation, especially in technology, I'm sure every industry is the same, but innovation drives success, and especially as competitive as industries are nowadays, if you just stick to doing the same thing over and over, you're never going to improve what you're doing. So almost at times, like, you rip up the book even though it seems fine, just so when you rewrite it, it's better. To give it an analogy, right? It's just the method about going about doing things is like, if you're not trying to iterate on it and improve it, there's no point in actually trying to go there. And then once I realized that it was more about innovating, and it's like, okay, well, we're in this industry where if we don't innovate, we're going to get left behind by our competitors. It was when I realized that it's like, well, my job isn't actually to create games, it's to innovate the creation of games and work with my team to come up with that. And that's why we hire such diverse people all around the world, because the more and people who don't do degrees, people who do degrees, people who are because you need all those different mindsets. Because if you've all came from the same class, you're all gonna have the same mindset of looking at things. It's your own experiences that drive your approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? Through diversity, we're able to be brave about looking to the future, and there is something about being brave. We have to be brave to make mistakes and learn from them. We have to be brave to actually make the choice to say that, do you know what, we're not necessarily going to go to university, we're going to try a different pathway. And I suppose there are different routes. There are work experience, internships, boot camps, apprenticeships. And I suppose if we can move on to sort of just touching on apprenticeships really with the panel, and your experience of employers, and there are employers that obviously make apprenticeship routes are the main routes into the sectors, but there are lots of sectors where apprenticeships are kind of just starting out. And so if you're an employer, what advice would we give in relation to apprenticeships? And Lawrence, may I come to you for that?
When it comes to apprenticeships, you've got a huge advantage actually over somebody who chooses, your university degree, and that is that you're actually going to do your job hands-on. So you're not going to wait until you've got the degree to experience what the job is like. You're going to experience the job as you actually study for your degree, and that to me is a huge advantage over the other way of doing things, because you gain the practical experience that you actually will need once you reach the world of work. So you've got that, I would say, you've got that head, you're ahead of the competition in that respect. And also it allows you to see a bit in what type of apprenticeship, what type of company would you like to be part of in the future? Are you looking at working for smaller companies, bigger companies? So it also allows you to experiment, to have a look, and to have that thing that you can't have. Once you've got a degree, you're set, is what they say as well, even though I don't believe in that either. But it allows you that flexibility as well to experiment and to see what type of jobs you would like, and you can move around, you can look. It really gives you, but as was discussed earlier, it gives you that knowledge of what flexibility is like and what it can bring to you.
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Does anyone else want to jump in to respond to that?
Yeah, I just want to say that, from my own experience, I basically got into my business because of a summer job I had, which was, in my field. The prior year, so in my third year of university, I had a summer job, and that's where I made a decision, what area I wanted to be in. So I think it is really important, just to do that. The other thing that I was thinking about is one person that I had that had a co-op position with us, and we really didn't want to offer anybody a co-op position at that time for that particular job, but they insisted, and they said, well, look, I'll take the job, I'll work on co-op at no charge, So they did, and before you knew it, they were very valuable to us, and we ended up giving them a job, and they were with us for over 9 years. And that set their career for the rest of their life. And that was probably 20 years ago now, 25 years ago that happened. But just to give you an example of how important it is.
Thank you for that, Frank. If I may, Katie and Dan, I'm going to move to one. We've got a really good question from Rona, who says that this is around entering into a different route. And I think the people around us influence a lot, especially our families. So sometimes we are more pressured to follow the path of university. I think that's really important. And yes, you're right. So in terms of what we have to do is empower families, employers, young people to say that this is not it shouldn't be a difficult route. It should be one that people, parents, schools, the whole ecosystem around training understands that it's not a second choice. This is an alternative. It's not to say that university degrees are bad. It's to say that this is a real viable option entering into the world of work. And I wonder to the panel, if you've got any responses to Rona.
I definitely have one. My own experience was that they didn't, my friends, my family to a certain extent, although they trusted me with my own decisions, they were a bit skeptical at first, but definitely my friends and things like that, when I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go and do, a level 3 qualification and try and self-teach myself to get into industry and see if I can avoid going to university, they were just so like, no, you can't do that. It doesn't work like that. It's just really negative about it. And it was kind of daunting. So I was like, maybe they're right. If I've got all these people saying you can't do it, maybe you can't do it. Even my teachers were skeptical as to whether it was possible. I mean, my actual job title now is I do 3D art, and my graphic design teacher at the time said, don't bother going into the arts. Like I could never work in, doing art or anything like that. So I had everyone saying that like it wasn't possible. And I was like, well, I'm going to try because I actually enjoy doing it. And I know I'm going to go further if I'm passionate about something than if I'm just trying to read from a textbook that I don't really care about for the sake of, printing some money on a check at the end of each month. I'd rather actually enjoy getting that money than like, doing something I don't care about. And yeah, to answer Rona's question, it's scary. You feel like you're going to disappoint people if you don't succeed, especially yourself, right? Like, I think disappointing my family and friends would have sucked, but if I didn't prove to myself that I could do it, that would have I would have never forgiven myself for that. And it's just, that's where I guess the individual comes in, and the industry and the personal circumstances around that come in. And it's where you really need to ask yourself, is this something I'm super passionate about? Because if you're going to try and undertake the self-discipline to try and try these alternate routes in that not many people have voyaged before, you're going to need to have a lot of dedication to be able to do that successfully.
And you're living proof. It can, you haven't disappointed anyone, you flourish. And I think that's all that we can continue to do from our various countries and walks of life, to say that, it is a true alternative, and people do flourish by in the world of work by using all sorts of different paths afforded to them. I've got another, and please keep the questions coming, panel. not panel, participants. And there's a question from Nolai, I think. A lot of people think that if you don't have a degree, you'll never achieve anything. But today, a lot of people without a degree have achieved a lot of things. I want to ask you, is the value of a degree everything, or just experience will do you enough? I think what I'll do is, I think degrees play a really important role. However, there are vocational programs that don't have a degree, and that's a route into employment. And again, it's not about one being better than the other. It's just about the routes afforded to you. And as Dan said, if you're passionate about something, it's looking more broadly at what are, in the industry, in the sector that you're passionate about, what are the routes into that sector? And I suppose if I can throw that open to the panel, in relation to about the value of degrees versus experience.
I'd like to just say that, definitely a degree or any education is very, very important. It's definitely the one area that will, that can open doors and give you opportunities that you may not have any other way. So definitely, if you can get an education, it's certainly better. But for some people that may not have that opportunity, whether it's because of money or situation, family, etc. There's many different reasons. There are always different ways, and I always believe it's important to still follow your dreams. With respect to the education, the degree, or even you think about a master's degree, etc. When I finished university, I actually applied to get a master's in business administration. And as I said, 5 months after I finished school, I started the company. Well, I didn't know I was going to start the company 5 months after I finished school. So I had applied for my master's degree. When I decided that, I can get as much experience actually working than trying to get my master's degree to learn how to run a business, I thought, well, that seems like a better way for me to do it. And I did that. And so I think, you can, use any way possible to get that education, apprenticeship, whether a college degree, even coming out of high school. If you're passionate about something, the important thing is to do it and try it, because, really nothing can stand in your way if you have the right attitude.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've got one question from Elias in relation to government policy, and how can we influence government policy? Bit of a difficult one, because this is very much an international summit. And I suppose, Lawrence, Dan, I'm going to go straight to you in terms of the fantastic role that World Skills play in promoting kind of different routes into employment. Perhaps, Lawrence, if you can give some tips.
Well, the first thing I would say is that, the problem that's mentioned, the question, you have it everywhere. You mentioned internationally. I think it's a global problem, whichever country you look at, there's this, this impression, I would call it this way, that, a university degree is what you need. But I think there's also now a slow realization around the fact that you need skilled people. And that the best way to learn a skill is actually not necessarily by just getting yourself a degree. Frank mentioned that he learned by experience. Nowadays also you can learn by experience and go and get your degree afterwards. So you complement the information you already have with some things you wouldn't normally look at because it's part of a degree. So there's that. So how you can influence the government policy. There's one thing that I would also say, I mean, we're trying, we're definitely trying. I think Frank and Dan both were at our events. I think they would both say that, seeing is believing. So when you actually come and see it, I would say any government official who comes and has a look walks away going, oh, wow, this is something else, and has their eyes opened. Because I think the thing to remember is very often people working on government policy have gone the university route, so they don't necessarily realize what a potential those career pathways have as well. So there's that, but there's also things you can do at your own level. You know, who has ever written to their MP to tell them, you know, actually why isn't, you know, vocational education better advertised to youngsters than before? Why isn't career advice done differently? Why is there things you can do at your own level, just as, you know, things you can do at the much higher up level? That's something I really would encourage people to do as well, is if it comes from both ways, as to why are you disregarding those pathways when they're, you know, just as good, if not better in some cases. So I think there's things to be done at every level there. And I would also say to bounce back on one of the other questions as well, I would just say, having witnessed it so many times, and Dan's just one example, it's about passion. If you really, really want to do something and you put your heart in it, what matters ultimately is the satisfaction you get out of it. Your friends are not going to have your careers. Your friends are not going to have your life. It's about, you know, it's one of the things where you should be individualistic, because it's about you and the enjoyment of what you're going to do for the rest of your life as a job. So it's really important that you really enjoy that, because you'll get much more out of your life by doing something you enjoy than just going for something because your friends advise you to or think it's the right thing to do.
And interesting you say about, you know, you can start work, you can then go on to a degree. You've got to be passionate about what you do, and that's an interesting point, is because you know, is the world of work changing? And if so, how are we responding as, you know, individuals? How are we responding to that world of work changing? Is that, you know, we've spoken about soft skills. What other things might we need to look out for to enter into careers that we think are going to be robust, that there's going to be longevity in them? Okay, Katie, I wonder if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, tech skills, and I think that governance question too. I think a lot of times what we do is just pulling a lot of data and have people look at it, because it's sometimes shocking how many school systems might be really sending this message of programs for college and college bound. But maybe 60% of their students will not be going that route. They're going to go into either a 2-year degree program or straight into the workforce. And locally, that might be where the jobs are, and they are very high paid jobs often and in high demand. So kind of circling back also to that question about, it's often not just up to the young person to make this very kind of heavy, it feels heavy decision at that point. And so I think getting the data and looking at the data and trying to use that to inform school systems and local government or state government, and also families and young people, about where the opportunities are, so that they are really aligning the messaging and programs and kind of incentives. Because certainly, and nobody should feel like they're doing less than if they're not able or interested in going on to university. I think it's not so linear, and there's a lot of opportunities. And what I also see kind of for future is that there's a lot of questioning on what is necessary. It's very expensive. The more education you get, it puts more demands on the employers of the wages they're going to have to provide. And are those degrees always necessary? Or is it skill and proving and demonstrating competencies? So we focus a lot, I guess, to kind of hit a lot of points in this discussion. We also try to move the conversation into competency based, so that everybody's kind of has the right information on what they actually need and what they want to get. But I think it's also, there's a lot of routes, and there's always on-ramps back into a different pathway. And I think that should be better maybe recognized and celebrated, so it's not as scary.
Yeah, it's really important to recognize and celebrate that. The celebration bit, very important. I wonder for the panel and perhaps for the participants, what jobs do we think, what exciting opportunities are there in the future through technology? What's the, you know, have we got anything that we can share in relation to new sectors emerging? I'm throwing it open to the panel.
I would say, I think, I'm sure Frank's going to say about that as well, but I would say that's the $1 million question,
Yeah.
actually. It's like, what are the jobs of the future? I think everybody would like to know, but it's actually really difficult because it depends on innovation. Like Dan managed, the next innovation might be just around the corner and none of us know what it's going to be, what skills it's going to require, and what you're going to need to know to do. I would say that's, yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think it's one that we all would like to have the answer to, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I have the answer.
Go for it.
I mean, obviously, I'm biased certainly because we're in robotics, but certainly if you look at everything out there, everything's becoming more automated. There's more data, there's more, you have Internet of Things, which is growing very quickly. A lot of people don't understand what that is, but if you just look at what's happening, you think about 100 years ago, maybe it's not 100, but 150 years ago, most people worked on farms, and now you look at it and it's not even factories anymore. It's not even working in the city, but a lot of people are working in the services industry. I heard yesterday, and I'm not sure if this is true, but healthcare is now the number one industry in the world. It's overtaken other areas. So if you think about, certainly because of the pandemic, that's one big reason why it is that way. But I think in the future, you have to look at the fact that we're going to have more automation. So that means there's going to be less jobs in a factory, but of course you're going to have the opportunity to service those, that automation. There's a lot of opportunity there, whether it's getting into the area of programming and technology, mechanical engineering, electronics, all that area. So that there's that part of it. But I think we're seeing more and more people that are going to be required in the services industry. So, that's a big area. And then, one of the things that I keep thinking about is these days, it seems, and it depends on the country, but you look, I'm in Canada, and I hear it's very similar in a lot of the Western countries, where it's hard to get a plumber or a carpenter, a lot of people like that. And these are the people that, you don't require that university degree. You can go to college for it, you can go to apprenticeship for it, but these are the people that I think that are making the biggest money out there, and probably have a less stressful type of job. So those are the areas that I would certainly tell anybody. I mean, people will come to me and say, oh, I'm thinking about becoming a plumber. I say, great, because it's so difficult to get a plumber, and they're making a lot of money. So if you're thinking about getting into one of those kind of trades, I think that's a great area to get into. Certainly in the area of construction. I personally worked in construction while I was working through university and even in high school, and I loved doing that. That was actually more enjoyable to me than sitting behind a desk and sitting on my computer all the time. So yeah, I think those are the areas that I would certainly look at.
I have something to follow on from that as well. What Frank was saying a little bit earlier on about the whole Internet of Things and stuff like that. I'm a strong believer in the cloud, and we're starting to see it more and more now, and how we have all these streaming services. And as internet is beginning to get faster and faster and faster, it means we can transition more things out of the physical space, or at least the consumer physical space, and into the world, things like Google Drive, Dropbox and stuff. Soon that there may get to a point, even with Chromebooks and things like that now, where we don't need physicalized hard drives and stuff. We can store it all in a data center. Microsoft testing out storing data underwater, so it's more secure and like more it's safer because it doesn't like degrade as quick. And you only have to look at the TV. How long ago was it that we all had satellite TVs? Now I haven't watched TV in God knows how long. I just watch Netflix, Amazon Prime and things like that. And you see that the music industry shifted over to Spotify as opposed to buying physicalized stuff. And then the gaming industry There was a thing called Google Stadia recently where they've started testing the idea of actually streaming games, so you don't have to buy a physical game anymore. You can just stream it, and it's going to get to a point where all people have to buy is a screen and some kind of input device, and they can access any digital media they want. And as more and more media like Kindles and books are getting put on the cloud, it's going to get to a point where we just have one screen that we can access almost anything from. Even things like, Frank mentioned plumbers and things like that. How many applications have been made recently for accessing doctors or things like that, talking to them like just one tap away on an application? There's absolutely no reason why Uber, things like that, we could have an application where a plumber could come around, and you just have plumbers who work freelance, and how hard is it to get an emergency plumber and how much do they cost? And you could just order one, and then 5 minutes later one shows up. It's just the Internet of Things is definitely, as internet speed improves, to me at least, it seems like something that's just going to keep growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, and as Lauren said, this is the $1 million question, but Marco has put on something that I totally agree with. Marco was talking about, employers of the future need to have a lot of skills. We've already covered a lot of the soft skills, that it doesn't matter what you do, those skills are transferable, and they're incredibly important to lift you out of what is going to be a very busy jobs market. As important, Marco says, it's around active and lifelong learning. We've mentioned it before, the learning doesn't stop once you've got a job. It kind of just begins, and that is a process that continues into in our lives outside of work. We're always learning. In terms of lifelong learning, I wonder if the panel have got any comments that they want to make in relation to lifelong learning.
I think you just said it all, Rob, if I'm honest, because, just listen to what Dan mentioned now that's coming up. I mean, either we learn or we get left behind. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I think it's as important in working life as it is, in your average normal daily life. Life is about learning. And I think the most important thing you need to learn is actually how to learn. Because if you know how to learn, you can learn anything, and Dan just mentioned in the future, maybe the plumber will not come and just to tell you at the distance what you need to do, and you'll be able to do it. But, can you learn from that? Can you keep an open mind? And I think I'm going to bounce back there on a question I saw as well on the chat, which was, if I don't know what passion I have, how do I get into it? Well, have you got curiosity? If you have curiosity, if you're willing to experiment, then look at what do you enjoy doing? Do you enjoy doing something manual? Do you enjoy baking? Do you enjoy cooking? Then go and explore, go and look. Dan mentioned all the tools are there these days. You don't need to go into the library. Just do a Google search. Just have a look around. What are the skills needed? What are the type of jobs around what you enjoy doing? And then just explore. The key to me is learning and exploring. If you're always willing to explore, try something new, then you will find the things that really interest you, and you will keep on learning. You will, at whichever age you are, you're going to go, I really enjoy this, I want to learn more about it, and you'll go and you'll take a course because that's the best way, or you'll go and get yourself a book, or you get yourself a tutorial on YouTube. How many of us have cut their hair in lockdown thanks to YouTube, right? So
yes.
Exactly. So there's all of that. I think that the really important thing is is be curious, explore. We've had a competitor recently. I'm originally French, the French team. She went into fashion technology. She did really well. And I don't know why, I just discovered through her Facebook account, she's gone now into an apprenticeship in joinery. I don't have a clue why she's done that, but she's gone from fashion to joinery. And why not? Why not? If she got bored of what she was doing and wants to experience something new, why not? So I would just say, keep an open mind, keep on exploring, keep on learning. And that's as important as to finding what you really want to do, what your passion is. And, you know, from my perspective, what I enjoy today is not what I enjoyed when I was younger. So be also prepared for that, for your taste changing, for you maybe wanting to do something different later on, and be ready for that change. I think that's the biggest thing to me that's changed in education and elsewhere, is something you set your life up for doing. It might not be what you end up doing 10, 15, 20 years later, because the world has changed, because things have moved on, because you have changed and you want to enjoy new things.
Absolutely. Dan, Katie, Frank, did you want to come in?
I think that everything that's been mentioned is really true. We often also so kind of the life skills being really cross-cutting, the digital skills, and then looking for ways to also upskill into kind of higher middle digital skills on different applications, which often I think we're kind of also, once we're in the workplace, forced to learn because new software and systems and things are rolling out. So I think it's bit by bit, but I think instead of maybe the daunting question of where the future of work, I think there are things we can't even imagine. But I think for all of us, it is also, there's going to be, like Frank was saying, tons of healthcare work. We know of 80 million jobs coming in hospitality, tourism, travel. So a lot of the really staple parts of what society needs will always be there, but teachers and doctors, plumbers, everybody will be doing their job with more tech, of course. So it's kind of bit by bit, I think, biting it off and keeping up with it.
Thank you. And I've got some comments here that I think are quite interesting. So thank you. So you're talking about how do you narrow down how do you narrow down the field so you can work out what you want to do? And I think I would reiterate what Lawrence was saying, that it's really about, we might not do the same thing all the time. I think what explore, try and work out what you don't want to do. That might narrow the field, rather than thinking, oh, what I do want to do. There may be things that just aren't you. And so my advice would be, if you're finding it difficult, cross off the stuff that you know you don't want to do. That might help. There was Paolo. How do we deal with senior people that don't want to give us a chance, or even space for young people to learn? To the panel, how do you think the participants, what advice would we give them to when they meet barriers in overcoming those barriers?
My suggestion is just do it. If you like that saying, the night, just do it. It's interesting. I think because of the age we're in, the digital age, a lot of people might be thinking, oh, there's not going to be any new opportunities. The people that already own everything. The people that are the companies that are already out there are doing everything. But that's not true at all. And one example is what Dan said with respect to Uber plumbers or that kind of whole industry. I think it's, when you think about that, if you are a plumber, you might say you might be working for somebody else, or you might want to be a plumber. Well, there may be an opportunity to get into this new industry, which is Uber plumbing or Uber electricians, whatever. So you work in a system where instead of working for one employer, you're working for yourself, but you're involved in this whole new industry where somebody goes into an app and they say, I need a plumber. And, 5 minutes later, you're going to show up there and you're going to be, charging whatever amount was agreed through the app, et cetera. So there's a lot of new things to do. Don't, senior people, if you're working for a company, that might be a bit of certainly a roadblock. But if you're thinking about getting into a job or something new, think about all the new industries and all the new opportunities that are coming up, and maybe think outside the box with some of these new ideas of how new industries can pop up. I think that's. I always look at opportunities. I guess as an entrepreneur, I always look at, if I'm not doing this, I'll do something else, reinvent yourself, etc. But the point is, just do it.
I would agree with Frank. There's definitely just do it. There's also the fact that school or the current institution you're in for learning is not the only place you can learn. So, if you've got somebody standing in your way, are there other things you can do outside of those hours that will open you the doors of what you really want to do? And as Frank said, once you grab that tiny little bit of it, can you then find a way of getting a bit more of it and trying to find ways? I think being innovative and thinking differently, as Frank said, is key there, of just trying to find ways of doing what you want to do anyway. I think, as Dan said, he had friends who didn't want him to do what he did. I've known competitors whose parents didn't want them to do it, whose employers didn't want to do it. So, they just went and did it from 10 o'clock in the evening until midnight. They were really tired, but it's what they really wanted to do. So they just found a way. As Frank said, I would just do it. I know it might not sound like a really good advice, but just start it, get it going. Because my experience also is sometimes senior people who don't want to give you a chance, once they realize this is really what you want to do and you're really good at it, will actually end up supporting you later down the line. Your biggest obstacle can become your biggest support at some point. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. That it can. I think it's. We said it before. It's the passion. If you're really passionate about something, don't let people stop you. And as Lawrence says, those critical friends may turn out to be your biggest advocates. And I think that's, keep that in mind. I hope that helps. We're coming to the close of the session. And I wondered if we've got about 2 minutes left, and I wonder if I could quickly whiz round the panelists, and if you were going to share one piece of advice to the participants on this call, what do you think it would be? If I can start with you, Lawrence.
So have a look at the WorldSkills competition if you don't know what you want to do. Have a look at all the skills on display, at all we're presenting, and that is just, that's just the slimmer of the surface of what's available, and then go and explore and find something you really want to do, and just explore. Life is about exploring and having fun doing it, so just go and find what you really want to do. Brilliant,
thank you. Frank.
Well, I agree 100% with Lawrence about exploring WorldSkills. I love WorldSkills. I've been part of it for at least 28 years, and I really believe in how the organization help students without thinking about going to university, through apprenticeship or through a college program or through high school. So I think that's really important. I do have another idea that I just want to share with everybody, and that is, if you have an idea, do it when you have nothing. This is something I tell everybody. I started a company when I had nothing. I came right out of school. I had nothing. I had no job. I had a bit of a loan. I was still working. I was still living at home, but I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. So think about what you want to do and do it before it becomes late, because, you get married, you're in a job you don't like, and then, but your dream is to do something else. It's going to be difficult to have that dream, to make it come through, because you have all these responsibilities. So do it when you have nothing to lose. That's my point I would tell anybody, and certainly anybody who feels like they're an entrepreneur. Do it now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Frank. And very quickly, Katie.
My main advice is that you can only plan so far in advance. So sometimes just think 5 years, and then you're always doing multiple things at once. Something else will lead to the next stepping stone. You're always kind of gaining new things, and your interest in life will change. Priorities will change. The world changes. So I say don't get too overwhelmed. Go with something that you're really passionate about, and you will get things out of that to transfer to the next thing you're passionate about.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Dan, finally with you.
mean, like Lawrence and Frank also said, definitely go and have a look at the competitions. Without them, I wouldn't have managed to find my route past a degree. And one bit of advice, I guess, would be to, once you find your hobby and that thing that you're passionate about that you could potentially turn into a career, don't know how to do it, understand it, because understanding is the foundation that you can build on to create the skills you need to do it.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And thank you for your contribution today, panelists. Thank you also for the participants, some fantastic questions that I hope that we've helped you in your direction of employment, in whatever passion you have, whatever field you want to work in. I wish you all the very best, and thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Just a few last words as well from the World YMCA to our panelists. I'd just like to echo, Rob, your comments. This was absolutely amazing. I listened with total enthusiasm and it was inspiring words from each of you. So thank you very, very much for taking the time and for joining us today. Very, very practical advice. And we look forward to hearing from you, I'm sure, at other YMCA gatherings coming up. The final word to our audience out there, we're not done yet. Have a look at the plenary stage. We're continuing over there. Thanks so much, everyone.